Hello, welcome to Beyond the Logo, which is the first in the series of webinars that we will be holding. I'm Jibril Simbabi, CEO of Routeput, which is a company which aims to help businesses improve profits by simply improving their public perception. We do this by building and reflecting brand positioning and marketing strategy into designs and websites and application development. Basically, anything that your customers interact with. We've helped clients in the US, UK, India, and of course, Nigeria experience up to 150% increase in revenue and up to 1,000% increase in brand popularity and perception. And this is something that we want to bring to everybody. And that's why we are hosting these free webinars and giving out free resources and have our blogs out so people can uh, get this knowledge for free. Let's go in. Now, with this episode being our first episode, we're keeping it short and quick. We want you to understand what branding is and differentiate it from what the logo is or what your colors are. By the end of this webinar, you should have a deeper understanding of what branding is, gain insights to strengthen your brand strategy, and see practical examples and case studies. We'll start with what branding is, because that is key. That's what this entire thing is about. And branding is essentially just crafting a unique identity for the business. And it has to help the business stand out, able, be known, be separated from every other business in its pool. It has to build trust. So when it does stand out, it has to be do that in a trustworthy way, a way that isn't nefarious. And it must connect emotionally with its audience. If you're creating a brand, you must look at three things. You must prioritize, you must make sure you speak to your audience through the experience that they have with your brand, through the emotions that they feel with your brand, and through how they see or perceive your brand, right? Most people think that branding is just the logos and colors you pick, but branding is much, much more than that. Visual identity is that exactly. Visual identity is what people see, what the public sees about your business, right? How they see something and identify that this is that business. So that falls, your logo falls under there. Your color, the tone and shading you use falls under there. The fonts you use fall under that also. Anything that they can see, your packaging. So those things are your visual identity. And very, very many people mistake that for branding, but branding is much more. In fact, branding is more strategy than it is design. It's about 70 to 90% strategy, and the remaining 30 to 10% is the actual implementation, the actual designing, the creating of audio, the creating of patterns, and how your packaging will look like. But branding is much more than just that, and most people don't understand. In order to create the right brand, to create a brand that connects, you must understand your customer psychology. The reason for this is that when you understand your customer psychology, how they buy, how they think, how they live, you will be able to know what triggers their emotions, what makes them come to a conclusion that they want to buy this thing, right? You need to understand how they make decisions, what is their driver. And these things are not things on the surface, right? They're not the things like, they're not just your logo. Your logo, in fact, isn't the primary determinant of why people choose your brand. It is fantastic for a first impression, right? Your logo gives a first impression that nothing else can give, but it isn't the only determinant or a singularity when it comes to decision making. People look at many other things. Take, for instance, when you buy a chocolate bar from the supermarket, you go and look at the shelf and you see three or four of them. I can be certain that if you're watching this right now, anybody who's listening in, that you do not know what the logo of the chocolate bar you like is, your favorite chocolate, you don't know what their logo is, what the logo of the parent company is, right? You know the name. You know that your chocolate has this name, and maybe that name is written a certain way because it triggers a certain emotion, and that's why you remember those things, but you do not remember the logo itself. Now you might, I mean, there are many people who will know the logos of their favorite chocolates, but two examples of companies that have done this really well, and by this I mean branding, is Apple and Nike. And these are coincidentally the biggest brands in the world. So they must either know something that most people don't, or they are lucky. And my bet is on they know something that most people don't. Apple, for instance, speak to not just luxury as most people think. When people think of Apple, they think of innovation. They think of a company that's breaking boundaries, a company that is helping them live better, a company that is helping them live better, right? A company that affects their lifestyle. Apple didn't do this by creating a logo and picking the right colors. If you look at Apple's color palette, it's anything but interesting, right? But they've created a brand much, and they've gone much further than the visual, right? So they created a brand firstly by understanding their customers, and believe it or not, this is a major part of Apple's game, right? Right from when Steve Jobs was there, they spent time understanding what it was that their audience wanted, their prospective customers wanted, how they bought things, what was their driving factor, what influenced their decision making, and then they tailored their marketing around that. They didn't just launch a product. They started with a keynote, right? They started with a seminar where they told people all the things they needed to hear. They put out adverts in newspapers and on billboards, and they did not talk about the product. They talked about how you felt using the product. They talked about how the product improved your life. And those were the people they spoke to. And those people who were looking for that improvement were the people who came and bought the first Apple devices. It wasn't the whole world that bought the first Apple devices. They found their targets and they spoke to them. If you do not understand your customer's psychology, you will not be able to sell to them. It will be completely impossible. This is the same thing that Nike does. The Nike swoosh is uninteresting. You hear many people tell you they love the Nike logo, but the logo on its own isn't special. It is the message behind the logo, right? The feeling behind the logo. Nike tells you just do it. They let you know that you put on a pair of sneakers and you can do whatever it is you want. If you're a sporting, if you are more inclined to sports and you wear the Nike shoes, you feel more confident, right? If you're looking for fashion, you wear Nike shoes, you're immediately fashionable, right? It increases your self-esteem and it lets you know you're part of a community. Every single brand does this. They bring you in, they make you feel something, right? And these are some of the brands that have done it the best. We can also call other popular brands like Coca-Cola, for instance. They are arguably one of the greatest masters of branding on the planet, right? They are a brand that didn't come to sell a product, they came to influence culture, right? They tell you that this is the way to quench your thirst. It's better than water. They tell you all these things. They even uh, 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 reshape festivities around the product. Notice that it has nothing to do with the product. It just has everything to do with how you make the audience feel, how you make your buyers, your customers, whoever it is that interacts with your brand, even if they do not purchase, how you make them feel. And this is what helps brands thrive. In order to be able to understand these things and create a brand um, that stands out, you need to know the core elements of branding. You need to make sure that your brand is positioned to be a strong brand. And in order to position your brand to be a strong brand, to create a brand that will stand against its competitors, you need to understand your strategy. You you need to craft a messaging, and you need to build an identity. You have to know what your mission is, right? And you have to know what your vision is, your values, and your positioning. In the next slide, I'll delve deeper into this. Once you have that done, you can now create your brand messaging, your storytelling. What is the reason why this brand exists, and how are you going to communicate it? You already know what the reason is. You know this because you've created a strategy. Then when you go into your storytelling, it's much easier. It's now a game of how do you say this in the right way that will communicate with people. If your brand is a teaching brand, then you have to speak like a tutor. If your brand is speaking about life, then you have to be calm and loving, like life. You have to be full or energetic if that's what your brand is pushing. If your brand is speaking to sporting enthusiasts or people who are sportsmen or in that niche, then you want to make sure that your tone of voice reflects that also. It needs to speak to those people at the level that they want to be spoken to, right? You don't scream at a person who's grieving. You want to be soothing to them. Now, identity. Only when you've done your strategy and devised your messaging do you now work on identity. This is so important. Most businesses start from the bottom up. They start from identity, creating a logo, picking your colors, picking your fonts, before actually deciding on what our mission is going to be, where we're going to be positioned in the market. You know, you don't, when you do that, you go into the market completely oblivious of what your competitors are doing better than you. But once you've done the research to understand how to position yourself, which is devising your strategy and messaging, then you would be able to know how to how to create a logo, what fonts to pick to be able to stand out enough to create a first impression that is memorable. Ultimately, your brand identity has to be the last thing that you do, or one of the last things at least. Your strategy must be formed and your messaging before your brand identity. I will hammer on this a couple of more times through this episode, but it just reflects how important this order should be. When you're building a brand and you're creating a strategy, you create any of these three: the values, the mission, or the vision. You pick one of them. Often you will have one or more of these, and then you can craft the rest, right? You use the one you have or the two you have, or sometimes maybe you have all three, you just make sure that they come together and align, right? So once you have your mission, which is where you're going, and or rather, once you have your mission, which is how once you have your mission, which is how you're going to get to your vision. So your vision is where you're going, your mission is how you're going to get there, and your values are the rules that guide the way you're going to get there, right? So let's say you're thirsty. Your vision is to quench your thirst, right? And the only way to quench your thirst is to go to the kitchen to get water. Now, your mission becomes going to the kitchen to get water. And your values are, I'm going to go to the kitchen with light steps and be nice to everyone along the way. So when people see your values, you are nice and you are heading to the kitchen, they have an identity. You are that person who's going to the kitchen who's nice, or that nice person heading towards the kitchen, right? That's your identity. Who's that? It's that nice person heading towards the kitchen. Your purpose is your values and your mission. Once you have values, you know those are your guiding principles and how you are going to achieve the actions you're going to take to achieve your vision, which is your mission. It creates your purpose. You're going to be nice to everyone while quenching your thirst, right? And that's your purpose. And for strategy, your strategy is the manner in which you're going to achieve your vision. So that's where your vision meets with your mission. Once you have all these, you have your vision, your mission, and your values, and you tie them in to create your purpose, identity, and strategy, then you will be able to now identify a culture. Usually it will jump out at you, it speaks to you. Your culture. Have you ever heard people say, oh, we don't do this here, or we do things this way here, we don't say these words to clients, we don't behave in this certain way? That's culture. Some will argue tradition, but tradition becomes culture. Once it's being done subconsciously, it becomes culture and it takes effort. If it didn't take effort, there would be no need for tradition. Tradition keeps you grounded. Why uh, I'm moving away from the point. To get your culture, you must understand your purpose, right? You must know what it is that you are, who it is that you are speaking to, and what promise you are making to them. If your business is a woodcraft business, then you are giving people the best quality, or you are delivering at the fastest time. That's your promise. You are giving them the best quality, you are delivering really quick. You have good finishing, or you are really cheap. Your story aligns with your purpose. It always has to. Once you identify what your story is, you know what your promise is, and of course, you've created your purpose, then you can understand how to engage with your community. Are they on LinkedIn? Do you need an office? Or are they on Instagram? Now, when devising your purpose, you see that it's a lot of it relies on understanding the audience, knowing what it is that the audience wants to hear and what it is that they value. So it's critical that you understand what your audience's purpose is, right? Once your purpose is clear, you devise a strategy to communicate your purpose, to position yourself best to um, achieve that purpose, right? To deliver it. Now, in the strategy phase, you need to work on your brand positioning. Remember all the research you've done, it becomes very useful at this stage because now you know what part of the industry you're supposed to be situated in. Some businesses are positioned to deliver things with ease, right? Some are positioned to deliver the highest quality, while some just get the job done, right? Whether it's the purpose, whether it's the purpose of the whether it's a product or whether it's a service. In your strategy phase, you want to devise positioning, know definitely what your brand goals are. You must understand your marketing strategy. Remember, we've already identified what platforms that you are supposed to be on. Now we will be crafting out a strategy for those platforms. So again, if you have your office or you're on LinkedIn or you're on Instagram, then you devise a strategy that works for any of these. Without creating your strategy, you will more often than not start working on your key messaging. Your key messaging are the key things you say to the audience that make them sold, that sell them on your idea, on your product or services. For instance, our output says you can invent output, which is exactly what we do. Whether it's through a workshop, whether it's through a rebrand, whether it's through creating a website or updating a website or creating your social media strategy, but our goal is to reinvent your output. And reinventing output often means increasing profits or increasing brand popularity. So you need to know what your key messaging is so you can speak to the audience. You don't speak to everybody. If we are going to reinvent output, then we are not speaking to someone who hasn't started a business, right? You need to already have an idea, even if that idea isn't flourishing yet. That idea hasn't been put to work yet, but you have an idea and then we work on it with you and then we improve it. That is reinventing output. Your messaging has to be crystal clear. What you do when a customer comes and interacts with your brand, either as the first on the first level or the second level, whether they interact with your brand through someone telling them about your brand or they see an ad, whether they see your logo somewhere or they see a write-up about your brand, it must reflect your purpose and speak in the language that they want to hear and they understand. The moment your key messages have been formed, your strategy is solid, your purpose is understood, you can now create an identity. You can create a personality to guide that will be guided in execution by your values, your mission, and your vision. You can craft a brand voice, you can craft your visual identities, you can create brand attributes, your elements, your assets, the other things that your brand uses to communicate, apart from just you or your staff. You have your identity, strategy, and purpose, your culture will form because you already have the rule book, you have the framework for should be, what should, what should exist. And then now it's all about executing and executing strictly. Many times when you have a brand, you want to divert. Say, for instance, you're a brand whose primary color is blue, and you're using blue and you speak in a soothing way, and you will see your competitor is really aggressive in the way they speak and they use red and it works for them so well. But because you've been so used to blue, you think it's old and you want to change to red. This is why this is necessary. It grounds you, it brings you back. You remember there was a strategy you're working by, and you will stick to it because it's supposed to work if it's done right. In everything we've talked about has spoken heavily on understanding your audience, on speaking to an audience, right? Before you start positioning, you must understand the audience. You must know their age, their gender, how much they earn, how educated they are. So you understand what language to use to speak to them. You understand what colors they resonate with. You understand how they want to be spoken to, what tone you need to use. And you also need to know what they do in their spare time. What are their hobbies? What are their values? Do they have, what religion are they primarily a part of? What's their lifestyle? Where do they spend most of their time at? Do they work out? Do they not? Are they people who live healthy, or are they people who binge on fast food? Do they buy on impulse, or are they critical buyers? They think and pro con before they make a purchase. But you must know these things about your audience to be able to understand what their problems are and see their pain points. If you see their pain points, then you can craft a message that will resonate with them. You can craft a message and speak in a tone that they will understand, that they will relate to. To put a cap on that is your visual identity. Your visual identity must speak the brand language always. There shouldn't be a time where you are Adidas, but you look like Puma, or you are Apple, but you look like Journey. You need to be your authentic brand every single time. It's easy to follow trends because they are working, but trends are short term. Trends will never get you far. They will get you 1, 2 sales, but you'll find in a couple of months you're running back to professionals to waste some more money on something you could have done much earlier, or you to stick to the strategy which was already created for you. So you need to make sure that you understand your audience. You need to be able to execute in line with the strategy that you create from your understanding of the audience. This is where the customer psychology comes in. This is the basis, the foundation for your profits in your business. Understanding your audience will not just make you money and attract new customers, it will also help you retain the people that are your current customers. You'll be able to understand how they think and what many times, let me give an example. Many times you might be thinking I should give a discount, when really all you need to do is give a listening ear to your customers. And if you give them a listening ear, they would work with you. It might be free resources. Maybe your customers will benefit from free resources, and those resources will give them the knowledge that they need to know that they need your service. And then that is what you will now use to hook them in and to keep them. But if you do not understand what their needs are, it will be impossible for you to know that this is what you're meant to do. That's why you need to carry out research with your audience. Often you will need to hire or work with professionals. You need to work with professionals because they are the people who understand how this works. They've been doing it for years and years, decades. They also have tools that you probably haven't heard about. These tools are what help us know and uh, quantitatively analyze the research work that's being done. If there's anything to take away from this webinar, I would say it is Branding is about experience, number one. It's not about how you look. It's not about how beautiful your logo is or how soft your colors are. It's about what experience the customer feels. It's not about your experience. If your business is about you, then you should be selling to yourself. But you don't. You sell to the public. And so you must create an experience that not only brings them in, but keeps them in. That is branding. That is not visual identity. You could have the best visual identity in the country, in the continent, in the world, but you are unable to communicate effectively. Your visual identity will fall flat. Your amazing logo that you spent hundreds of thousands on will be completely useless if you do not create an experience. You want your customers to come in, make a purchase, request your service, and go out, leave leave thinking that this was a nice experience. I didn't know this when I started. Now I know this. And when they talk to their friends, to their family members about you, they are telling them what your brand does, how your brand makes them feel. The things they will be coming from an emotional point, right? And you need to make sure you connect with the right emotion because you can't be selling fluffy clouds and be communicating with fear. That is, I mean, you probably can with a fantastic team, but it is difficult to do and it is difficult to manage. So you need to make sure you communicate with the right emotion. If you're going to be a teaching brand, then communicate like a teacher. Give them wisdom, right? Teach them things they didn't know before. And if you're going to be a brand that is a sporty brand, a high life brand, then your message and the way you speak, your tone of voice, your visuals all have to be really, all have to communicate that. And finally, your strategy. If you do not have a strategy and story, you don't have a brand. If you do not know your vision, your mission, you don't have a brand. We have tools that we have created to help business owners move through this. So if you're a marketing lead, you're a business owner, entrepreneur, and you are here, we'll email. If you are you are a business owner, marketing lead, or an entrepreneur, and you're here, we will email you the resources for you to download, and you can also request a free brand audit. With the free brand audit, we'll analyze your brand and tell you exactly what's wrong with your brand currently and how to fix it. It's absolutely free. We give you our ultimate branding checklist, which is what we use internally to assess the brands we work with and even our brand. So you can uh, work with the branding checklist and make sure that your brand is in line. By the time you complete the checklist, you will most likely have a proper brand. We also are giving out branding identities for free for anyone who sees the webinar, who's here watching the webinar, listening in. At the end of the webinar, you will get an email from us with these resources. If you happen to watch this at a later time, you can also send us an email or connect with us on Instagram, and we will share you the resources and you will build hopefully a fantastic brand. Moving on to the Q&A sessions, we have Stephanie. We have Stephanie here, and she's going to be reading some of the questions that have come in through the chat. And Stephanie, over to you. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'll be taking questions from you guys here in the audience. I might not be able to go through all the questions, but I'll just pick the recurring ones and they will be attended to. Okay. All right. So this first question here is from John. And he's asking if I'm starting my business, should I focus more on my brand vision?
Okay, I think your network's a bit bad there, but I think your question is, should John focus more on his brand visuals or what?
Or brand strategy?
Okay. Like I said during the presentation, definitely your strategy first. Make sure your strategy is on point and then you work on your visuals because your strategy is supposed to guide your visuals, not the other way around. So if you're going to start your business, work on strategy first, understand your strategy, and then you can now start building visuals around that strategy.
This question is from Leah, and she wants to know how often should a brand revisit and update its branding strategy.
All right. To update your branding strategy, there isn't a fixed time for that, but you should review your brand strategy every annually or every 2 years, or some brands do 5 years, depending on how quickly your industry changes. So you want to review, typically we advise all our clients to review their brand strategy annually to make sure they are in line with the markets, because markets these days change really fast. So you want to review you don't you want to review your brand quickly. You want to review your brand first. You carry out an audit on the brand to make sure that it's in line with what it's supposed to be and in line with the customer's psychology, customer psychology before you make any changes. So you don't just review, you typically audit your brand, and this is usually done by professionals. You consult them, they look at everything your brand does, and then they work on that. We audit brands, and we currently have our free audits going on. So if you watch this video, then you're lucky you get the link in the description, or you can request one directly from us, and we will be sure to give your brand a full audit.
All right. Next question is from Ibubi. And he's asking, what's the biggest branding mistake you see small businesses make?
The biggest branding mistake I see small businesses make is going the visual identity route before creating strategy. Most of them, most small businesses work on logo first. I have an idea. Let's create a logo. Let's create our colors. Let's create this nice patterns. Oh, I saw this really good visual identity designer. They pay him a lot of money to build their brand identity, and the person does that. And granted, it's a fantastic identity, but it will have to be changed in the next 6 months to a year when they realize that it doesn't align with the market that they're servicing. And this often is expensive because if you did get a full branding package, it often comes the with strategy being done for you and the research being done for you, as well as your visual identity, as opposed to doing visual identity separate and your branding separate. So I would say that is the biggest mistake I see small businesses make with regards to branding.
All right. Next question from Hannah. How do I make sure my branding connects emotionally with my target audience?
Again, this comes down to your strategy. You must do your research, know how they speak, understand your customers, understand the audience, understand the market as a whole, what your competitors are doing and why they're doing that, who they are speaking to. Then you know how you want to differentiate yourself and what phrases, what words, what sentences, what emotions you need to speak to that will trigger a response from your audience.
Okay. I'm going to take Sakura's question next. So he says, our audio is a bit muddy and his network isn't great either. So would these slides be available after the webinar?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, the slides will be available after the webinar. We will email the slides to you. So everyone who attended the webinar live will get, because you fill the form, they will be emailed to the emails we have on record, and you have them and do as it is with them. Also, they are coming in PowerPoint um, formats. So if you don't have PowerPoint, then you probably find a way to open it. I'm sure there are other versatile tools out there. And with
Okay,
regards to
awesome. So
I should add, with regards to our audio, we will work on that. If the audio is muddy, we will try our best to make sure that the next episodes of the webinars are much better.
okay, awesome. So Sakura, I can look out for our email
to you with the slides. I'm going to take one more question
Yes.
from Jacqueline, and it's she's asking, can you share more examples of how a strong brand message influences design decisions?
All right. I think that's a fantastic question. A strong brand message is like guidance for the designers, whoever is designing, even if you're a one-man business and you're the one designing. But once you know what the brand message is, you know what you want to communicate, then you can weigh your design against that, right? So if your message is supposed to be energetic and nice, and you come up with a design, and the design looks good, but isn't energetic or nice, then you know we need to tweak this a bit. If your messaging is soft, then you want your logo to also be soft to convey that message. When a person looks at your logo, they shouldn't look at your logo and think, "Oh, it's so rigid." You know, they want to look at your logo and it's soft, it's adaptable. Also, finally, I think one of the best ways is when you look at a full visual identity being done, right? And you see the patterns and the soundscapes and the logos and the just everything in the visual that's part of your visual identity. Once you know what message you are trying to communicate, you'll be able to tie everything in together to definitely say that you are communicating on an emotional level. Your logo is or your logo or your pattern or the design on social media is really hitting the nail on the head. So when a person scrolls in view of your brand, when they see your brand anyway, they catch a glimpse of it, they get that emotion also. They get that message also. I hope that answers the question. I think we only have time for
Okay.
one more question, right, Stephanie?
Yes, we do. So I'm just going to take one last question from Blessing. And the question is, what are some signs that it's time for a company to rebrand?
Like, uh, I believe it was Leah's question also for when to rebrand. But I think the how often to rebrand, right? To review your brand. I think the signs to I think it was Leah's question to how often to review your brand, and which is very similar to this. But to
Yes.
the signs to rebrand often come from the market. Your when the market changes, when something drastic happens, you see the auto companies currently, the auto brands are shifting from whatever they have been from very aggressive pictorial and just from graphics and from very graphic mascots in their logos, they're shifting towards plain text. They're switching towards plain destructive text, many of them, and this is done because the market is shifting, not because the brand is shifting, but they now, because the market is shifting, they need to realign. So if the market shifts and it's a significant enough shift that it affects the philosophy of the brand, if the brand is going to shift with the market, then the brand should consider rebranding. If also you are pivoting, you are changing your offering, you are changing the philosophies of the brand, then you have to rebrand accordingly, unless your brand is versatile enough to go with the flow.
Okay, so that's all the time we have for questions on this session.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you all for coming in. I hope this has been as enjoyable for you as it has been for me. And I hope to see your emails or your comments on how the brand has really helped, on how the webinar has really helped you. And if you do want to reach out to us, you can leave something in the comments and we will be sure to give a response. Or you can reach out to us on Instagram by mail or over at LinkedIn. So we've already created what we already